Now, time to talk about Bitcoin. You'll have heard that word mentioned quite a lot recently, and you're probably wondering if you should have invested. Maybe you've got Bitcoin FOMO, or are you a bit concerned that it's not secure enough? You like to keep your money where you can see it and in something, let's face it, that you understand a bit better. Let's try and find out if you should invest in Bitcoin or not. I'm joined from South London by the author of Bitcoin, The Future of Money, Dominic Frisby, and here in the studio alongside me, Kate Bevan, technology writer and broadcaster. Welcome both. Well, Dominic, as you've written a book on the subject, I'll come to you first. Should people, if they can, given that one Bitcoin is now valued at £13,000, which is out of the reach of most of us, should people invest?
Well, that's like saying what's going to happen in the future. Nobody knows. I will say this: you don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin. You don't have to spend £13,000 in order to invest. You can buy a fraction of a Bitcoin. And my advice has always been that everyone should buy £20 worth, £30 worth, a tiny amount, and just familiarise themselves with the technology. Because the technology is incredibly exciting, and they should learn about it, they should educate themselves, and it's very likely that the technology, future money systems, will be based around this technology. Having said that, this is now an investment mania, the like of which I have never seen in my life, and I doubt I will ever again see in my life. Bitcoin could go to $100,000, it could end tomorrow. Bitcoin has had 80% corrections in its lifetime. It could easily have another one. The question is, when does that happen? So if anyone is investing significant capital now, they should do it with their eyes wide open and realise this is a mania.
It's interesting, isn't it, Kate? Because talking to our economics editor, Ed Conway, before, he said, be very cautious because Bitcoin is still relatively new, and this year we've seen a huge spike in its worth, and it's being called a bubble. And I just looked up the definition of bubble. It's something that's created by a surge in asset prices, unwarranted by the fundamentals of the asset. And that's the point, isn't it? Bitcoin has no history, therefore it has no intrinsic value.
Well, that's exactly it. And I think actually Ed said everything I'd say, which is that, well, I'm not here to offer investment advice, but I've stayed away from it. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot barge pole. I mean, there's an interesting point about getting to understand the technology, because it is an interesting technology. I don't agree that it's the future of money, not in the near term anyway, because it's complex, it's got high barriers to entry, and it doesn't actually solve that many problems. I mean, I think if you're going to have a technology really take off, it's got to solve problems, or it's got to make things easier or better. And I don't think the blockchain, which is the technology that underlies the Bitcoin, is going to do that.
Dominic, just to put the cat amongst the pigeons, I wonder if when paper notes were introduced as a form of currency and somebody said, there you go, I'll give you that and you give me 2 cows, you had to trust that that piece of paper was worth something. Is this the same with Bitcoin? Is this just something that we're going to need to get used to?
Yeah, money is tech. It has always been tech. When we found ways of casting coins and thus certifying the amount of gold or silver or copper in a coin, that put paid to things like whale's teeth and shells and other primitive forms of money. The invention of the printing press saw the introduction of paper money. The sort of move to digital technology in the 80s and 90s put paid to the check, and now we have blockchain technology. Your other guest there said that Bitcoin doesn't solve any problems. I would disagree with that. It solves a number of problems. Firstly, we have here a new system of money which is not issued and controlled by governments. It is determined by computer programs which are clearly transparent.
But it does come with risks, though, because you do hear about people being hacked and losing what they've invested. And I understand that something similar happened to you in the early days of Bitcoin.
It certainly did. It certainly comes with all sorts of risks. It's the Wild West out there, and I had a lot of Bitcoin stolen, and if I'd have been a bit more prudent perhaps in my security discipline at home, you know, the amount of Bitcoins that I had stolen, I would never have to work again. in my life, is that much money what they'd be worth now? I'm not suggesting for a second this is without risks. I was merely taking issue with the fact that, with the argument that Bitcoin doesn't solve problems, it solves a host of problems which had dumbfounded computer programmers for 20 or 30 years, key amongst them the problem of double spending.
I mean, Kate, we are moving online now, aren't we? So many people I speak to now don't actually carry cash. They pay on their phones. They pay with contactless credit cards. You don't actually see your money. It is all online. So is this any different in that respect?
It's backed by a proper banking system. I mean, I think, Bitcoin is really interesting. I think of it as kind of a beta version of a vision of the future. Not necessarily the future, but a vision of it. There are lots of issues with it, not the least of which is security. But also, one of the key things is it's not backed by anything. There isn't a central government behind it. There isn't a central bank behind it. There are no assets behind it. And now we're seeing derivatives trading in Bitcoin. And, this is one of the things that's driving the bubble. Although that said, the price seems to be quite off this morning.
It could essentially
Can I just...
Of course you can.
Can I just interrupt you there?
Of course you can.
That's just not true to say that Bitcoin is not backed by anything. It's backed by complex mathematical proof of work.
None of that is an asset,
That's not correct to say that. The reality is that fiat money, government currency, is not backed by anything except the law. The reality of modern money is no money. You have the law backing fiat money, but you have actual mathematical proof.
All right, you're talking about mathematics there, but what people at home will want to know, Dominic, is that if they have Bitcoin online, is it as safe as having money in the bank? Banking is regulated. If something goes wrong with your money, if it goes missing in the bank, there is a way of getting it back. With Bitcoin, the point that Kate is raising is that your money isn't as safe, your investment isn't as secure. Is that the case?
No, it's not.
The way to see, by the way, your money in the bank isn't safe.
Of course it is. It's backed by all kinds of guarantees and backup schemes.
Wait, let me finish. It's not safe in the sense that the process of erosion of inflation sees your money debased by about 3, 4, 5%.
And Bitcoin isn't eroded by inflation. That's exactly what's happening. It's going.
No, it's a deflationary system of money. It's deliberately designed to be deflationary. In other words, its purchasing power increases as time goes by.
Its purchasing power increases only so long as people are prepared to accept it.
Let me just answer that question. The way to see Bitcoin, it is cash for the internet, and in the same way that if you had cash in your person, physical cash, you would take all sorts of precautions with it to look after its safety. The same applies to Bitcoin. I do not advise for a second having large amounts of Bitcoin, having
The problem is, and I'll put this to Kate, Dominic, the problem is it is as yet untested. It is still very much an investment for people at the moment. People aren't really buying that much on Bitcoin. I think there's a stat out that said that last year, Bitcoin accounted for less than 0.1% of e-commerce transactions. And so it hasn't really been put into practice yet.
No, it's not. And actually, some of the people who have been taking Bitcoin, like Steam, the games owner, for example, has stood back from taking Bitcoin. They're now not taking it because it's far too volatile. I mean, between you deciding you're going to buy a game on Steam, if it was still taking Bitcoin, and actually executing the purchase, the price could have changed quite significantly. It's too volatile. It doesn't have the sort of characteristics of money as we understand it. I mean, and Dominic said that we had moved away from things being currency. That's not actually true. I mean, anybody can issue a currency. Cigarettes were used in Berlin after the war when money was in short supply. Local people have issued currencies. Brixton issued its own currency. Anybody can issue a currency.
OK, Kate Bevan, really interested to speak to you. Dominic Frisby, thank you very much as well. I must admit that volatile, spiky debate, I'm not considering my options with Bitcoin just yet. If you are, let us know, news@sky.com. Thank you both very much. Coming up, All Out Politics with Adam. What's on the way, Adam?
Well, Sarah Jane, if you can get steamed up about Bitcoins, and I don't really know what they are, what about Donald Trump? He gets up a lot of people's noses, and according to the new American ambassador, he is coming to Britain in the new year.